All the women were sucked up into flying saucers, and mechanical doubles were sent back to Earth to take their place. Did any of them mention a leader named Zardoz?
Motherfucking goddamn orange peel beef.
Hey, everybody. All right, it's time for one fucking hour. I am Evan Husney, joined, of course, to my left by Tom Fitzgerald. Tom?
Howdy.
And to my right, Marcus Herring.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Hey, good evening, guys. How's it going?
Yeah.
It's going good, eh?
Yeah, sure. All right, so we're back. We're back to it here. So thanks, everybody, for checking out last week's episode, one fucking hour on Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That was a lot of fun. And thanks for all the awesome feedback we got on that, too, by the way. I appreciate everybody checking that out. But it's a different 1974 movie this week, everybody. It is our first double dip. We're looking at John Boorman's science fiction bizarro flick, Zardoz. So I'm going to start the clock.
Double dip because we did Deliverance already, right? That's the double.
Yes.
That is
it's the film right before Zardoz, you know.
Right. So here we go, picking up where we left off with old Boorman. So, all right. So last week when we mentioned we were doing this for this week's episode, we had I think all three of us had not seen this movie in a long time. I think it's been, I know for me, probably over about 10 years since I'd seen it last.
At least for me, yeah.
Yeah. So, and Marcus, you were just a huge fan of the trailer to Zardoz, and some. Well,
yeah. I mean, I think that when I remember, like, everyone's laughing because when we were laughing with each other when we were getting back together to do this episode after we'd already said we were going to do Zardoz, and we rewatched it. Everyone's like, "Are we going to be able to? Are we going to be able to talk about this for an hour?" But I think that the way I remember this movie in my mind is I think of the trailer, because the trailer is so, like, that's what when I thought about, like, let's be a good movie to do. I'm remembering the trailer. The trailer has so much promise for it. Maybe we could just check that out. It kind of is a good table.
It's one of the big wicked ass trailers of the 70s. Let's thread it up.
Okay, let's do it. Let's check out the trailer to Zardoz.
It's one of those trailers that's like, it's better than the film, and
awesome titles, by the way, right off the top.
To you, his chosen ones, the gun is good.
I mean, right off the top, just excellent imagery. You're sucked into whatever the hell this is going to be.
There's so much WTF going on. You know?
Yeah, it's very mysterious.
Yeah, I mean,
in the stone head.
I don't know.
It is the only path and passage into the vortex. You will show me how you come to be here.
It's kind of like you're watching this going, like, how are they going to possibly make a movie out of this? How's this all going to fit together into a picture, you know? But then you watch the movie and you're kind of like, okay, that's how.
It almost feels like someone's modern take on a Tolkien or something. If there's anything relatable that this imparts.
Oh, I love that.
All the text is so good. This trailer is done by a friend of ours, actually.
Yeah, do tell.
This one of the great, one of our old buddies from the theater days, Pablo Ferro, who's sort of like one of the number one title designers of all time. He did the Doctor Strangelove titles and all kinds of movie titles. He was sort of like another Saul Bass, like another number one title designer in the 60s and 70s and beyond. And he also did trailers, like he did the Clockwork Orange trailer, which is another trailer where like the trailer is as good as the movie, you know, the sort of the William Tell Overture one. And so he did this trailer too, and it's got some of his hallmarks with like the text coming at you, like his old commercials have that same kind of trick. And a lot of visual ideas, like that kind of globe thing.
Let's maybe watch the. Let's do visuals on the last part. Just
like that's not even those shots aren't in the movie. This thing that's not even in the movie. Like he made those for the trailer, and he's shooting. Right. I remember asking him about that. He said that he shot it off of like one of those giant searchlight like lenses, and anyway, so he's just a really cool trailer guy.
Very hip, creative guy. And, you've seen the ripoff of his Doctor Strangelove titles, like, everywhere. Like, super thin, super tall and thin, and also fat and thin, like that style. Stop Making Sense, he also did those titles. And, that's another example of the Pablo font, kind of, that he hand drew there. That stuff's still good.
All that stuff is him.
Yeah, he's a major talent. He passed away a few years ago.
Yeah, so you watch that trailer and you're like, wow, how could that possibly... This movie looks fucking incredible. Like, I gotta watch it right away.
Like next to Holy Mountain or something.
Mind. Yeah, it looks like another Holy Mountain, but it's like, wow, it's a Holy Mountain from, England or whatever. And, but then, so upon rewatching it, it's... it doesn't quite live up to the trailer maybe, but...
Well, if I may just say in terms of, looking at Deliverance was the first movie... we watched for 1 fucking hour, and I think one of the reasons I thought it would be interesting for us to talk about here is that what a weird follow-up to a big hit. It's one of the more bizarre, singular freak-out follow-ups, overzealous freak-outs to a hit movie, and I know that's something we've talked about before on the show, but that's what fascinated me about it. Like, you make this movie Deliverance, that's a cultural phenomenon, totally different from this, and then you just like totally spiral out into whatever the fuck this is.
Unexpected to say the least. In fact, if I had no idea, I wouldn't think it was the same director. I mean, Deliverance, I'd forgotten that it was our very first 1 fucking hour, and we're such huge fans. I mean, I just love that movie to death, and part of it is the restraint and the simplicity of all of it, and that's one of the differences with this film, Zardoz. And actually, I think I'm going to coin this term. This was Boorman's Magnolia. I'm going to call them Magnolias from now on. And if I can, I'll talk about the phenomenon, and it's pretty obvious what it is. It happens all the time. A director really makes it big and makes a huge impression. And then they make a really ambitious thing, the film they always wanted to make, and they often know that this is the only chance they'll have to get a blank check. So Boogie Nights begats Magnolia. Then what often happens, by the way, is that there's a really small, quirky film with a small budget following it, to the Punch Drunk Love. So PTA is almost a perfect example, but there's more. There's just a few more. Hey, I made The Godfathers. Now I'm going to make Apocalypse Now. And it's unwieldy and it took forever and it's expensive. And then he does One from the Heart. And then I'll just do one more. It's like Taxi Driver made a huge impact. Scorsese. Huge. And then he's like, I got to make New York, New York. Unwieldy, huge, flawed, strange, muddled, and then he kind of grounds himself with Raging Bull, which is a great grounding film. But that was his Magnolia. Scorsese's Magnolia is New York, New York. So anyway, this is Boorman's Magnolia. And what's weird, I gotta say, is that Boorman double dipped on his Magnolias because he followed Zardoz with Exorcist II: The Heretic. Yeah, so it's like, what are you doing, buddy? You know what I mean? Like, that's not how it works, Or more to the point, what studio hired him for the sequel for one of the biggest films of the era? And he, after seeing Zardoz, like, guys, watch Zardoz, and are you sure you want Boorman? No?
Well, I was gonna say, oh, is Exorcist II his Punch Drunk Love? But anyway, let's.
No, it's not. It's another. He double dipped on his Magnolias.
Yeah, I don't think Excalibur's that great either. I remember watching that, it's been about 20 years or something, but I remember it being very snoozy.
He might have triple dipped. He's weird. Yeah. Anyway,
there's a little bit of insight there. I think, and just as, I guess after Deliverance was a big hit, he could do whatever he wanted, right? And I kind of stumbled upon it by accident, what he was actually trying to do and how he ended up with Zardoz. Because when we were watching, this movie's got a all this tension with like the immortals, right, and like the problems that immortal people have because they can't die, right, and like what that does to their psyche, etc. And it was sounding a lot like the elves in Lord of the Rings to me, because they are this immortal race, and it kind of gets into that a little bit in the Tolkien about like the problems of being like immortal. And then when I looked it up, I was like, oh, he actually Boorman was trying to do Lord of the Rings before Zardoz, right?
Yeah.
And so like anyway,
Well,
so yeah, that's why there's
this
like
is funny.
a Merlin wizard in this, and like Gandalf, and then Excalibur. He's got
Yeah.
wizards on the brain, I guess. So.
And to be clear, just so everybody knows, like John Boorman wrote his own script, and unlike Deliverance, which had really great source material, and I think that's one of the dings, one of the flaws of Zardoz, bringing it kind of down from being a really huge epic classic, is that it would have been great if somebody had some like a fresh set of eyeballs were on his screenplay. Like there was a couple guy, like a pro or something, because I think there's some big screenplay problems. So
Well, we're definitely going to get into
like
that.
a classic sci-fi book or some adapted something instead of like going out. Yeah, it's a classic mistake.
Forgot my spray bottle. The thing I was going to say, let's just take it back a step to talk about the context. You mentioned after Deliverance, he makes a super smash hit. He's hot as shit. It's in blank check mode. I don't know if you guys know this, but this is funny to me. Do you know what he was actually offered to direct and turned down before developing the Lord of the Rings thing?
I'm going to guess that it's a wildly successful movie.
The Exorcist 1.
Oh, I heard that. Yeah.
Yeah. And
then he got another bite at the apple later.
Yeah, he sure did.
Look what he did to it.
Yeah, but he turned it down, called it repugnant, and said that it would be like torturing a child for 2 hours, but he couldn't, and I couldn't do that. But so it's funny that, of course, he'd go on to do the sequel, of course. But seriously, no, I mean, but Boorman's capable of making really great movies.
He is. Well, and there's Point Blank.
I was going to say Point Blank is
Deliverance.
5-star movie. And we're going to talk a lot about this with Zardoz. It is a fascinating movie, and I think that is what kind of makes it interesting to talk about, because it's so singular and obtuse and only could have existed probably in 1974. And I think let's just spend a minute here talking about the context in which this movie is being birthed in, because I think that out of the late 60s into the 70s, with a lot of these directors, big name directors, I think there was a lot of 2001 envy kind of going around, where they saw Kubrick step forward, make this just giant space epic that was big and heady, and then a director like Boorman stepping in, and literally in this case, like, I want to make a big floating heady, in this movie.
Yeah, with an obtuse script, and it kind of falls apart, and like it doesn't even have like a full consciousness narrative. It starts disintegrating, but 2001 it works. It's very, very cool. It doesn't always work here.
Yeah, the idea for Zardoz is like bigger than the budget, right? So it's like he couldn't.
It was a really small budget, actually. Yeah.
Yeah,
But they did. It looks pretty good for a very small budget.
Yeah. It does seem like a classic problem when people like try to do too big an idea for their budget. Like it just never. It's always.
I don't think it's the budget. I think it's the script is overstuffed. Like I think they got away with visualizing the conceptions and the ideas and themes, but I think it's just overstuffed. And he even says that in the commentary. It's like basically like, whoop, boy, here's another idea I've just thrown onto the pile, and it's like there's almost not enough time for the older ideas to marinate in a person's brain. It's just
that's
it's
definitely
overstuffed.
true. There's too many ideas at once. It's like everything at once. Like
It's
H.G.
overstuffed.
Wells and Tolkien and Huxley and King Arthur is all at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other contextual element that's going into this movie, as he's putting it together, is the fact that he is, under the spell of a lot of drugs while both writing and directing this film, and says, like you said in the commentary, there's even passages that he's not even sure what he meant, looking back 20, 25, 30 years later, mainly due to the drug haze that he was in. I sort of equate that to like, Stephen King doesn't remember full novels he wrote, being under a similar sort of headspace. And this, I mean, imagine like writing, producing, directing, and creating a giant film like this, and just not remembering where or what you were going for,
Like,
so.
Yeah. Well, what did Krusty the Clown say when you watched 60s footage of him? What was I on? Like that's that seems to be a bit of a thing about that era. And actually, let's speak about an era where a director like that would be zonked out of his fucking mind. Please. And making an ambitious project. You know, I'm calling it like the far out era. And we just addressed how it's not, I wouldn't say it's directly and also not directly influenced by 2001. I think 2001 is one of the first far out films. And then it happened, sci-fi films. And then it happened, and they were sort of tolerated by the studio and audiences and critics to some varying level. Like it was actually like, you could do a film like Zardoz back then in the context. It's because it's after 2001, but it's before Star Wars, and then it was like a light switch, you know, and it was never the same. And I think it wasn't really so much that 2001 brought that in, but it was the 2001 heralded in that this is a new era, because again, it's the baby boomers and you know, everybody's on acid, you know, the old story, you know, and like Jimi Hendrix is like a pop star, he makes, you know, mind-blowing, insane music, you know what I mean? Like different times. So you could see a Zardoz existing. And there are other examples of films like that. There's science fiction specifically. Phase 4, sure. The Man Who Fell to Earth, actually. I just thought of that. That's one. And then also, and then also just a couple more, like if you'll indulge me, this one called Savages by James Ivory. And it was written by Michael O'Donoghue, Mr. Mike from SNL. It's from 1972. Wow. It is far out as you can get, seriously. Wow. And it actually, Zardoz reminded me of that, maybe more than anything. But then there's also that fun one. It's called The Final Program, AKA The Last Days of Man on Earth. And it's an adaptation of a Michael Moorcock science fiction novel. He was one of those real far out guys. And he actually, he worked with Hawkwind, this author, Michael Moorcock. And I think he like narrates some of his insane gibberish in openings of Hawkwind songs. Yeah, right. And so the Final Program, aka The Man Who Fell to Earth, or The Man Who Last Days of Man on Earth, is really the sister of Zardoz. There's even similar themes, and it's really wild, but it's funnier and it's spriter and has zippier editing, and it's generally a zippier film. Still not that great, but anyway, I'm just saying that that's 1973. You know, it's like this was it. This was a very strange short window where you could actually have a Zardoz. Nothing before that. Nothing in 1961. Nothing in 1981.
Right.
So that's kind of cool.
It reminded me of like The Prisoner too, a little bit. You know, that was on TV. Like it's like 68 or something, right? So it's like acid kind of surreal psychedelic spy on TV. That's awesome. So crazy, and some of it feels like Zardoz too, with like the giant plastic bags and like English countryside, and just like that interest. Orange alert, you know what I mean? Interest in England as a culture, you know what I mean? Like that there was like swing in London, and people's heads were sort of interested in like English still, you know, like
Beatles,
Beatles, right? Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so that puts it into this cultural context. Where in a way, looking now at Zardoz, it makes more quote unquote sense that it would be conceived and most importantly financed and at least received. It wasn't really a big box office film, and the critics mostly just laughed it off. You know, it was kind of like dismissive. And I think he gave him a lot of fodder to kind of laugh it off. There's I know. Well, because it's like almost the worst prescription ever to just, you know, be pants down embarrassing is, you know, is like to...
The costumes.
The costumes.
Oh, you know, maybe that, a little bit of that. The red diaper. No, but I'm saying like what the critics have then, I read Pauline Kael's review recently, very dismissive. And anyway, it's just like, I think the formula is if you don't have any sense of humor, this stuff really doesn't quite work because it's so stiff, and it has no frame of reference to normal human behavior because it isn't normal human behavior. It's not 1974 behavior or our kind of behavior, which is basically 1974. Like human speech and communication is so stilted and odd because it's supposed to be some other time and place, and so which is fine. But I think you have to kind of figure out how to crack through that and have a little bit of a wiggle in it, if that makes any sense. And well, Star Wars is very funny, you know, and I think humor here is very lacking. But so it's kind of like a boring professor's trying to, you know, give this long, you know, oratory to a class, and he just comes off so like such a stiff and and someone who like maybe cracks a joke among the students, and he's like not even going to crack a smile. It's just too uptight.
Right.
And
everything, and like even Sean Connery's like performance, I think is a little bit takes some of the responsibility there too, because he's supposed to be this like force of vitality that's like changing the society, but even he's so stunted and emotionless too, and like he doesn't bring that vitality in his performance. Like he looks very manly, but
he has no charm, and it's fucking Sean Connery.
And he's also seriously,
that's amazing.
Wow.
It's a bizarre choice for a leading hero as well, as a guy who's a fucking murderer and a rapist in a diaper, is a weird choice for that. And especially, he's supposed to be this like kind of action hero guy. And what's interesting, obviously everyone talks about it when they talk about the casting of this film, is that, Sean Connery's in this in-between stage. He's coming out of all the, his last James Bond flick, and he wants to do something different. He wants to show the range of what he can do.
Right.
And this is
right.
wild.
I'm not just James Bond.
Yeah, but this is still kind of this action hero thing. There's even a shot where he, fires the gun at the lens and everything in that trailer. We just saw it. And so you see that. But it is such an interesting choice. But of course, we have to mention that what was supposed to happen was, off of the success of Deliverance, John Boorman was going to put Burt Reynolds in that diaper, which I would have loved to have seen. But it's funny.
I could totally see it.
Me too.
He's even more of a charming, wise-ass guy. So he would have to tamper that down too, or he wouldn't. Boorman wouldn't let him be the usual Burt Reynolds.
I could see people wanting to consume his sweat more so than Sean Connery's. Let me just put it that way. But it is.
Women loved Sean Connery back then. Women really loved Sean Connery.
Really. It's like a sex symbol up into his like 70s.
Burt Reynolds would have been like a boob to like a lot of cool, sophisticated women.
Right. Sean Connery.
They loved Sean Connery.
He's such a sex symbol. That's what's so weird. I mean, it's like I wonder if the costumes, they must have played a little bit differently back in the 70s, like how basketball shorts were shorter in the 70s, but they look kind of like we kind of look at them now and they look silly to us. But I mean, part of it is like looking back on it, it's hard for us to like look at his outfit and say that it looks good, because his physique, he's not actually out of shape. He's like 43 or 44 when he's making this movie. He's not quite out of shape, but he's not like, he's not actually. It's just hard to look at it in a post-Rambo world. He's not cut. He's not.
Yeah, that's not a fault of the film or him, though. It's like,
no, that's what I'm saying.
Think about six packs back then.
If it's just like looking back on it, like 30 years, that's it. The way he looks probably played a little bit better in the 70s than it does today.
A little bit, but it still looked like a red diaper. People were mentioning diaper. I was reading in 1974. I was reading diaper. But it was a little too silly.
It's too silly. But what is funny to us now, knowing that he wanted Burt Reynolds in that role, is how he kind of makes Sean Connery look like Burt Reynolds, with the mustache and everything.
Mustache, yeah.
So he really wanted him for this, but we
all want Burt.
We all want him. Yeah, we want Burt.
Yeah. And I think if Boorman didn't rein him in, Burt could have been pretty charming in a lot of those scenes, where he interacts with these other incredibly stiff actors, the Charlotte Rampling and that other woman. That's brutal. I mean, I'm feeling a little rambly here. Like there's a lot kind of going on. We haven't played a clip yet either. So, other than the trailer.
That's okay.
But yes, it was going to be Burt. How about that? So also, I think for at least audiences then, they found it really off-putting to watch James Bond in his goofy outfit, but also his behavior and, just a real head-scratching kind of role that he's in. Like, because he's, honestly, his role as Zed is that's maybe not the entry point to addressing the confusion of the script, which I think is really lacking. Boorman's script is a really major problem in my rewatching of it. But so now Zed is supposed to be like the chosen one. Like he's genetically designed to be incredibly superior even to the Eternals. But it's weird because he has never known that. He was just a brute and an exterminator. So it just, that all kind of like he needed to be enlightened. I mean, I guess these are stimulating thoughts, but what I'm saying is it's not, his character is all I'm saying. It's not imparted well for me to work with. You know what I'm saying? I
got you. But one thing, no, totally. Let's just shift gears slightly to, I think Zardoz, a big theme of even this episode is that there's a lot of promise. There's a lot of promise coming out of Deliverance going into this movie, and just this is 1974 is the time for a big freak out sci-fi film, and the film fucking delivers in that first 5 minutes. So
Absolutely,
I just want to spend some time talking about that, because right out of the gate, you see these incredibly beautiful shots of, I guess these aerial model shots they're doing with that fucking head floating in the sky with the clouds and everything as it lands down. And then, of course, you're seeing all these guys with the helmets on and everything, and they're rushing toward it. And then, something straight out of a fucking, Jodorowsky film. And you even mentioned at the end of last week's episode that it hints at some Jodorowsky's Dune moments. I think when you see that head fucking regurgitating guns, out to these people, I mean, that's a pretty fantastic.
It's a great image. Yeah.
Yeah. and then I gotta say, let's take a look at it. But I think sometimes with a film that opens with such promise, then when it doesn't keep that aloft, the energy and the excitement, boy, it fucking dies. Like worse than a slow film, because this film really drags almost immediately after when Connery's goes and penetrates the vortex and he's suddenly wandering around like radish patches. It's like, I don't know.
Radish patches.
Whatever, it's like it doesn't. There was a huge problem in the following scenes, and that's a bad script. And here's my 1-2 punch with I think really what's wrong with this film. The script needed work with another set of eyes or two, and the editing is really draggy and sluggish. And all this great imagery could have come in. There's so many times, because I was actually cutting up these clips we're looking at, and I'm not saying I would do a good job. I'm just saying, like, I could just see someone else taking a look at the edit and going, bring it in, bring it in, bring it in, bring it in. And you keep cinematic momentum and pacing. And I think one of the problems is, I'm figuring it out, is that like these gorgeous shots here that you could look at for a long time, I think Boorman fell in love with this film, which is maybe a drug influence thing. And I think like that movie Silent Running, for instance, which is awful. Pacing's awful. Yeah. It's awful pacing. No, but what I'm saying is like sometimes these filmmakers get so in love with the visual composition and creation they've made, and they're so into it that they can't let go of it. They can't think, well, maybe like 1 minute of this incredible composition is good. We don't need 3,
Yeah.
And I think there's something going on there.
That's what I was thinking about in terms when I was talking about the budget, was because there are great visual ideas, but I feel like the film is just barely like a feature, like runtime wise, and I felt like. So what do you? He mentions, Boorman did mention that he said too he thought it was too ambitious,
differently,
funny, and I think maybe that's part of it too. Is like instead of he wasn't able to do that much, so he let those scenes run really long so he could have a whole full movie. That's kind of what it felt like to me.
Maybe. But I think it's part of it.
A lot of those ideas, a lot of the visual ideas are really great. There's like every, and at the beginning, at the end, there are lots of great visual things projecting onto statues or shooting things in reverse. And it felt kind of like sometimes people make movies like this today where it's like a music video director or someone who's like really visual will make a movie and it's just like, it's
Beyond
just
the Black Rainbow
video stuck together. And it's like with a really bullshit kind of like too philosophical script. This felt like the text for that kind of movie.
You're so right. And actually one of the big problems I have with modern film is that they do get obsessed with the look, the style, the composition, like Nick Refn or something. I'm not even saying I like his stuff at all, but I'm just saying that like he gets so dazzled by how pretty things can look inside the frame, and they're like, oh, a script. Right, and there's scripts are treated like dog shit with aesthetically powerful films, and for years. And maybe you're right. This is maybe the uber text of that style, because the script, the visuals cannot be sustained with that script. It's on like pegs. It's just not. It doesn't have a good foundation because you don't know or care about any of these characters, even in their broad. Philosophical representational selves, like it's too garbled a message. Like even as symbolic straw men and women kind of characters, it's just like sometimes it's just like I'm looking at people talking in a room. It's like the room looks cool, but I'm like, huh?
Right. And the visuals are cool, but they're not done well enough to sustain an entire film.
Exactly.
Right? They're not enough to carry it through. And there's like a lot of, he's trying to do something really heady.
You gotta have a script.
It's almost like it's we talked about this, like it's too smart and too dumb at the same time, right? Like it's he's trying to do too many ideas. Like, I'm going to critique politics and religion and
I know. Well, it's being dumb about smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Being dumb about smart. That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. And that's maybe what's the most unique thing about it. It's like,
yeah. Well,
it kind of just go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. Spray. Where's that fucking spray bottle? So the thing is, I think about it is, looking at the movie, like, again, hadn't seen it in over 10 years. A lot of imagery did stick in my mind, though, especially like going back and watching the trailer before I rewatched it again and seeing the imagery of the tabernacle, and seeing the imagery, like with all the bodies encased in the glass. I mean, that shit's fucking dope. And the floating head, all that stuff. It is iconic, even in the fact that this movie never was part of any iconography. It has those imagery, like has those images that stick with you. In a major way. And one thing I want to segue to, because I think we should talk about the script and the plot and the story elements, because it's very confusing. It's hard to follow. I think it does that other thing that I can't. I don't want a film to always hold my hand, but this movie feels like it's 20 steps ahead of its audience member at every scene, where you're all retroactively, I think on every viewing of this movie, you might learn more about the plot, but while you're watching it, so many of the elements that he's trying to get across in this movie are lost while you're trying to watch it. Actually going through and watching the film while thumbing through Wikipedia might actually be the only way you can unlock what this movie is about at some junctures. But I think let's just talk a little bit about the plot setup, because then I do want to, because for those who aren't going to take the Zardoz trip with us, into watching the full film, but I think it's worth talking about some of the themes in the movie, because I think there's some pretty interesting themes in the movie. So anyway, Zardoz. It is the year 2293. I'm cool with that. But it is a post-apocalyptic world, which is a matriarchal society, which is interesting. And Sean Connery and his crew are considered the Brutals. Okay, they're the barbarians who worship the flying stone head god Zardoz, and that head has the power to grant death or eternal life, which is dope. That's cool.
If I may, he's actually one of the executioners that are like part of the. See, it's too complex. There's too many.
Too many groups.
He's thinning the herd of the farmers who are making harvests for the
Eternals,
apathetics. The Eternals. Sorry. I hate this. My head hurts. I don't like this.
Well, the thing is, so all right, so they are farmers, but there's the executioners that killed the Brutals. Okay, we got that. And the Brutals live in a wasteland called the Outlands, to be a future Sean Connery vehicle later on. Their overlords are the Eternals, who luxuriate in a different zone of this land behind a force field, which is called the Vortex. This is insane. Now, the Eternals created Zardoz, the stone head, to rule over the Brutals. And I guess they sort of inspire the Brutals or the executioners to commit mass murder to keep the other ones in line, or whatever.
Like they control the sheeple of the Outland.
Right. But Zed, Sean Connery, as you said, is the chosen one who doesn't accept this fate, being under the control of the Zardoz god, and so he embarks on a journey, which is cool. I like this. This feels very comic book to me, which I think this movie also feels very mid-'70s comic book. And might I add, when I was reminded about the Eternals, I thought about the fucking Eternals, which is fucking Jack Kirby's one of his great series, and this even looks like the fucking Zardoz head. But anyway, so but then. It's a really cool scene where he climbs into the head. He wakes up in the head. I'm down with that. And then he's kind of set on this journey. I just wish the vortex looked cooler. I wish what's on the other side of that journey was a little
budget. That's part of the budgetary thing. It's like just shot on like an Irish farm, an old Irish farmhouse kind of.
And they just added like plastic inflatables in front of the sheep or whatever.
Inflatables, yeah. Oh God. Yeah, there's a weird moment that's like he punches through a plastic bag, and they're like, he's like trying to force through, like he's trapped inside this balloon thing, and he punches through, and they're like, oh, it can't be done. But the whole time you're going like, it's just a plastic bag that anyone could tear through. They're not selling the illusion.
Well, but the material is in Zardoz land.
Sure, I just kind of felt like, but I felt like as an audience, like the illusion wasn't like sold.
I know.
So
It took me away from it.
Like, I felt like that was kind of like just in the movie, like a little microcosm of the movie for a second.
I know,
there,
because the plastic
selling it.
Because the plastic being used in that shot is behaving like plastic. And it's stretching.
Right. But they're telling you like, no, it's not plastic. It's something much.
I know.
Deeper.
You're good call. That one caught my eye. You know.
I vote no.
It's kind of like how you feel
no.
But
thank you, Roger.
Let's
it is, yeah.
But you know, so that's kind of the basic premise for this. You know, Zed is going to go on and sort of expose, you know, allegedly what's going on in the vortex with this other society, right?
He wants the truth.
Yeah, he wants the truth.
Quoting him.
Yeah, exactly. So, but that's kind of the setup is you have these interesting compartmentalized societies within this far future world. I'm kind of down for that, but Tom, you sort of were having some interesting, you know, thoughts on allegories with that.
Yeah. Well, let's maybe pivot to you know, what we do like about Zardoz, because this is sort of a complex one fucking hour. You know, it's going to go places. So what I really liked is this representation, an abstract representation, a symbolic representation of what is very, very common on a global scale. Then, now, I don't know if it's getting worse or it's mutating and becoming different, but I would say that the elites, as represented in the film, their Eternals, are representatives of the elites class. Now you could have this be micro and be, you know, New York City or Silver Lake in Los Angeles. You know, like Silver Lake in Los Angeles, where I am right now, is like full of elite assholes, you know, and they're surrounded by people who scrub toilets, security guards, you know, and a lot of that was exposed in COVID. Well, no, but just workers, you know, like and that's even getting into like the COVID era, you know, like essential workers, like a bus driver, you know. So a bus driver is outside the bubble in Zardoz, and they're fed a bunch of bullshit, which conservatives say, you know, is like you know, the Soros brothers and all, or Soros and all that shit. And but then a liberal might say is you know, QAnon and all that stuff. So it's like everyone always assumes that the masses, the workers of the world, are always needing to be herded by groupthink, by these cynical overlords. That's a very classic theme, and there's definitely some truth to that. So it's cool that Zardoz does that in a very cool looking abstract sense. But what I'm saying is you could have a Silver Lake, a Williamsburg microcosm. You can also have a macrocosm and just go, everyone in America is doing better than like everyone in Afghanistan. So this winter, 9 million kids might die. Like, just like, not, we're on the same planet, but all of us are like, you know, watching Netflix, going to Jamba Juice and, you know, jumping rope. Marcus likes to do that, you know. So what I'm saying is it's kind of grotesque, and I like that the film represents that. I feel terrible, you know what I mean? Like not just class, you know, in like a nation, right, but the West, and the West in the third world. And that's what I see. And there's a great shot in the film that's a beautiful visual representation. If you could thread that up, Evan, it's so good to see the have-nots. And it's very ice cold, and it's funny because this footage is narrated, and she's explaining kind of generally what's happened to Zed, the situation leading up to the situation they're in now, and like she says this one line that's very cool. She says, "In order for us to tolerate," I'm paraphrasing, "to tolerate all these faces of people that can see us and we can see them, to tolerate their starving faces right here, we had to get colder hearts," you know? And I think that's a great thing that Boorman was like playing with and chewing on in an incredible visual sense, you know, these kind of complex issues. So that's something I like about the film.
The cast here I read was played by like basically Irish kind of, I mean, Boorman calls them gypsies in the, not sure if that's probably not exactly what they are, but they're like sort of Irish traveling class that's like basically like the migratory workers in Ireland. That's who they're.
Yeah, they're probably illiterate, you know, and comparatively though, the Eternals inside there have the knowledge of Aristotle to, Dostoevsky and the art of Picasso, all in that bubble. And boy, that kind of kills me. I like that he created a world in his future because, that is a stark representation of really what's very common here. And then, of course, there's resentment. They get angry. Later, they were begging outside the bubble, and they start getting angry, And if you look, there's a thread, Zed Connery, right to the end is saying, his motive to destroy the vortex, that inner bubble, is revenge, and it's so badass. And all his buddies who are killing all those people, yes, the Eternals want to finally die, so they're gleeful, like, please shoot me. But, there's a double thrill here. Like, the Eternal people want to die, but boy, those executioners are like, oh, fuck yeah, I'm dropping this fool right here. And that's pretty weird. I like that. That's a very head trip. Yeah, that's it. We could thread that up too, just as we're talking, like, the weird massacre at the end, because there is a dual satisfaction, I think is the term I'm trying to think of, where finally the bubble is
that this one?
No, it's massacre is the word in there somewhere. Sorry, everybody.
I have
the word massacre is in the line.
No, please.
You don't have it?
Please kill me.
Now we can say yes to death.
Yeah. So anyway, Connery's character set it up so that these poor, different groups, subgroups of the Eternals, can have what they finally wanted, which is to die. And I think one thing that Boorman, at least he says he wanted to play with that was, people seem to want to live at least longer, if not eternally. Like, we don't want to die when we're 80, right? And so he's playing with that what if science did catch up to that concept and that wish, and actually people do live eternally, and what kind of mutated things happen to a society. And I think there's another big general theme which I like being represented in Zardoz. A lot of things in this film that are never represented otherwise. And one of them is simply technology getting ahead of people. And I think that's a very modern 22 thing too. Like we are advancing so far with technology, but our stupid brains, our cave person brains, are not even beginning to be equipped with it, and it's still there. And in a way, and this is what's confusing about the film, but Zed is representing kind of the primitive human, the cave person, but he's also this, exceptional, Superman, rare, genetically engineered thing. But what I'm saying is, there's a nice theme going on where is all this technological advancement going, and can human beings handle it, and all the strange, unexpected mutations that do occur? Boy, we're there now. We're in a weird place as a species right now because of technology.
The immortal stuff, like I was saying, it's like that same question of like, what would it be going through an immortal person's mind that they actually envy the mortal people, like they actually crave death?
I bet they would,
because mortal people want to live forever and immoral people want to die. So that's the part from Tolkien that must have stuck in his mind.
Yeah, and it's totally. But that is a really cool set piece for this movie. I wish it was coming across clearer, because the idea of like these people just want to fucking kill the Eternals, but the Eternals also want to die, and be more human at the same time, is kind of, that is pretty freaking, that is cool, and leads to a weird scene of people like, I'm gonna fucking kill you, but then they're like, yes, kill me.
They're like, hallelujah. I know, it's very odd. And if I might, I just
there's too much at the same time, because there's that, and there's the class warfare thing going on, and there's the religion. There's just like, it's just too much. And there's also this sort of critique of like liberal sort of like 60s stuff, because they're like the effete upper class. They have sort of like a commune, intentional living type vibe, where they're like they meditate, and they're like an overly democratic society, and there's this rustic living, and it's called there's this vague new aginess to everything, and they live in a vortex, so like there's all this sort of like veiled, not so veiled critique of like kind of like I guess like a new agey hippie type culture,
Absolutely. And which is also rare, especially for being within the era still, 1973, 74. And like, one thing that really caught my eye is what you just said, which is like overly democratic somewhat, which sounds like a bad thing. It sounds weird, but like like everyone, I often tune into those conventions that the Democratic Socialists have. Those like biannual meetings, and they have insane rules, and they have like, can I raise my hand to propose that I raise my hand? That kind of thing. You guys, I don't know if you've ever seen that stuff.
Clip of where they can't get the meeting going because there's a lot of people complaining about the orders and the rules basically, so they never.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of that happening, and I think there's probably just as much happening 50 years ago, because 50 years ago is a lot like right now, as far as the left wing generally and where their heads are at and how they operate. And so he's probably observing a lot of that, like endless pain in the ass process. So I found that kind of interesting. But I think if we can thread this up too, which is the psychic violence, I think there was this was actually, and I'm not the only one pointing this out, there's a guy on trial for thought crimes, essentially. And I thought that there was something here in terms of like, a modern critique maybe could be had, and you could reference this, of people who are not following in line with the groupthink of the right or the left, but especially right now in the left, people are in fear of speaking their minds if it doesn't fit the cultural paradigm. So here's what happens to this guy in the film Zardoz.
Accused of transmitting a negative aura in second level.
This is not so. I have studied our social, emotional substructures for 140 years. These thoughts are constructive criticisms, pyramidical. I am innocent of psychic violence. As you examine my face and eyes, you will see that this is true.
He's lying.
So that's that trial, and I don't want to get into the whole thing, because what I really hate is those kind of criticisms are fodder for like Fox News and O&A and all that stuff, and I really hate that, actually, because it's too easy to make into a cartoon when a lot of people are trying to just do the right thing, So, but what I'm saying is, forgetting all the politics now and everything, it's just what happens to a social group that maybe has mutated in some strange way, the Eternals. And you know what? We could have a long conversation about this, because it is interesting. He's saying that there's a rot that happens when, number one, they live for hundreds of years, but also they don't have to work. Like, they're a victim of their own success, like I was saying before. Technologically, they don't really have to do anything. And they just actually start mutating their minds into like pointing out that someone committed psychic violence, but there's no real consequence. Like, why is he on trial? What did he do wrong exactly? You know what I mean? I think there's something interesting that Boorman wanted to play with, which is the rot. There's also the apathetics. There's a whole group of people who basically sound, and I'll shut up. It's just like, they sound to me like people now on pills playing video games all day. Please elaborate.
I know. Well, yeah, that must be you, Evan. No, the thing is, I think what's interesting, I'm kidding. The thing, I think that's also a cool thing that he was playing with, where the ideas are kind of connecting in this movie between, what he's playing with, in the social sense. The idea is that when you are misbehaving, or you are doing things that are not following the rules, the idea that the Eternals will punish each other by aging them. And it's kind of a simulation of aging, because it's really that you will be aged, maybe 20 years or even more, but you'll have to perpetually stay.
But you won't die.
But you won't die, but you'll stay old, and that's kind of like an interesting punishment.
You'll eternally be elderly.
Right, eternally be elderly. That's a cool sci-fi concept, actually.
Totally.
Yeah, like that's a great.
Look, there's a better film here. There's a better Zardoz. That might be my. That might be my
execution of the apathetics, though. It's a bunch of old people in like a foiled room. That's one of the visuals I don't like. Is when they go to. It's kind of like a dinner party ballroom.
They're not the apathetics.
Old. Oh, that's right. Sorry, that's another class.
The apathetics are young. Yeah, because this movie's a fucking mess. You got confused.
There's too many groups. But one thing that's also
renegades. Yeah, the apathetics.
Yeah, right. The apathetics, right.
Well, that's the point. He's supposed to be waking them up with his vitality. I remember Boorman saying that, and like he's just like completely just like Sean Connery's performance is so rigid, but as soon as he walks in there, they're all like drawn to his magnet.
No, he has an aura, but also just like it's all symbolic. It's almost like biblical. And I think even
saying just as not sold by the filmmaking is all I'm saying.
Right, the performance and stuff. But I mean, like it's like he sweats. We don't sweat inside this bubble because we don't have to. Right. But this guy sweats, who's like more salt of the earth, like the way human beings used to fucking be. Like this is, or more actually importantly, biologically, this is what we're not supposed to be like this. We're not supposed to be in these ivory towers, in these bubbles, totally cushioned and cocooned. Because and here's the mutations that will happen. And I think the Apathetics, he did a good job with that one, because that actually I see the corollary, or more the thread, and actually I see some relation to right now, because people who don't have to, we the three of us are not in the food chain. Like Louis C.K. had a whole bit about this, but like we're not in the food chain. We don't have to really fear being eaten. And when we make our food, guys, are we killing things or even harvesting? We're not doing anything. So it's like when you make such convenience in a Western society, it starts mutating and people start doping out and doing just knuckleheaded things, or just playing video games constantly, which is, metaverse. It's just like you're not on Earth anymore because you're not connected to the roots.
It's funny because I see what you're saying. I see them more as more of like an upper class type thing, and I totally see where you're coming from with that. I think it's really interesting. But I'm seeing that like one of the things I read was IDing that and I didn't come up with this, but they were IDing the Eternals as like landed gentry class in England that just were like landowners basically, who just didn't have to work because they could just live off of like the rent coming in from other places, and that they were higher up in society, almost like up to the lordships, but they were just sort of like the emerging class of like landowners that were, I don't know. I don't have a good, I'm not English, so I don't have a good like, point of reference for this historical class, but I can see where that's like it's a little bit more like a higher upper class than just like, us who actually do have to work. We don't like work toil in the fields, but
Marcus, I'm saying it's all relative, and forgetting the source of his conception, or even Zardoz for a moment, it's a fact. We can read. Like the three of us can read, and I think there's more people who can't read on Earth than can. We could do this all day, it's rough out there for most human beings alive,
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying, like, I'm just talking about the different like interpretations and different like different like.
Well, there's levels like of all this,
Exactly. That's what I'm.
Sure.
Tuning to.
All right, so
but I'm going with Boorman because he's very high-minded. That's all I was getting at. That's all. I'm done.
I like it,
Dr. Evan.
I was just trying to jut in with a good segue here, and I really wanted to segue out of the the concept of the metaverse when you're talking about video gaming, and just kind of the idea of the tabernacle. I think is a quite interesting set piece here. Not only visually does it look really cool.
I love the tabernacle scenes.
I know tabernacle scene is fucking awesome.
Thread it up, bro.
Which tabernacle scene do you have?
Well, let's see. Yeah, I didn't call them tabernacle. My apologies. It's mirror. Is in place of tabernacle. So there's Zed in mirrors. Right. You could thread that up, and then there's mirror freak out too if we wanted to. But this is a good one. This is good.
Well, the one thing I wanted to say
this might be the most holy mountain moment of the film. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, it's absolutely just visually amazing. But I think the cool thing about the tabernacle is that it is this artificial intelligence machine that is the thing that's keeping everyone eternally alive and protected from death, and that's also another cool sci-fi element that this thing has, which I think is kind of ahead of its time in some ways. And I don't know, I just think it's worth talking about because it is you kind of ID'd that this movie has a Matrix quality to it too, a little bit. And was that what you were vibing on in terms of just like the tabernacle, or more so just with
not the tabernacle, but actually the Matrix did come to mind. Not the bubbles either. Actually, this is this there's a lot to chew on in this film. It just doesn't really add up, but like it is stimulating. But no, for me, the Matrix was about who is behind the mask, or who is behind the
yeah.
levers, or who's pulling the levers. So it's like, I actually haven't seen The Matrix in forever, but if I'm not wrong, it's generally about like your mind is blown because you've seen that the simulation of normal reality is actually just this projection that is it's a hallucination, and actually what you're really doing is a very different exercise, and you're just given this hallucinatory state of mind to be tripped out to service. There's these mysterious overlords that you don't know and you don't see, and I think that that's another thing that Boorman's playing with in the whole thing about his revelation about finding the Wizard of Oz book, and of course it relates to the Wizard of Oz, where you don't look at the man behind the curtain, right? At the end of the film, Wizard of Oz. It's like he's not the great and powerful Oz. He's this weird guy who has all this technology. So I was just thinking of the Matrix because his mind is blown, and I don't know if Zio, what's his name, Neo, excuse me, sorry. Yeah. I think he there's like a crack in the Matrix, and I think this moment is like a crack in the Zardoz simulation, and you know what I mean, because I don't know if he was intended to seize that book title. He's hyper intelligent. He'd read every book in that library that the Zardoz creator led him to and led him to read. But I think maybe, I'm not sure, weird Boorman stuff, stimulating. It's like he might have forgotten that the source of the title, the name, the moniker Zardoz, is in like, oh fuck, right, it's from the Wizard of Oz, and that book is in there, and Connery's character wound up finally finding that, and it just cracked his brain. And it made him go like, that kind of that zoom out, zoom in shot, like, and everything is different now, and he sees everything differently, and he realizes that there's like this strange higher power that's controlling him and everything else. Yeah, that's kind of dope. In 1974.
Totally. Now that we're getting
the
to
Matrix, another movie series that was sort of like ruined by packing too many ideas into.
Yeah, it's true.
I just one last thing about the Wizard of Oz too. It's like, just like where his head was at, like, it was when I was reading about him, how he wrote, like, Boorman, like, got together with the dude to write the Lord of the Rings script, and that he was really tweaking on, like, he did weird things, like change it up to where, like, Frodo has sex with Galadriel and stuff, but he was saying that he was really vibing the most on Gandalf, of course, and then this is the Wizard of Oz, and then then he did Merlin later with Excalibur. They mentioned him in this movie. Like, he's like all over wizards. He's got wizards on the brain,
Yeah. All right, you are a big. We got you. You're the big Lord of the Rings fan.
Because you could have been making all that up. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what you're talking about.
God bless you.
Anyway, God bless you, sir. But now that we're sub 4 minutes, guys, I really gotta be just tough on you two, because I do want to get some of the sillier shit in that's from the film. We talked about some great stuff. Let's talk about some silly shit. Because right off the bat here, man, there's a lot we didn't touch, guys.
Talk to me.
We got Kiss the Bride.
Hey, here we go. It's the 70s. That's the only explanation. Hello.
Yeah.
I mean, there is an idea here. He's in disguise, so they don't find out it's him. But still,
it just doesn't help. It's not helping Boorman to take any of this shit seriously,
Well, but see, also but that's the other thing. It's like I said before, my bumper sticker is, if this movie has a sense of humor, it's too obtuse for me. Like, how are we supposed to take that in? Because that is a humorous image, but it isn't it's not set up humorously, and just like, what is, you know what I'm saying? Like, can I laugh at this, John Boorman?
I know.
Right. Right.
And one of the things that is really cool that I did want to also get in is, because I picked up on this during the
reverse
rewatch.
destruction.
Well, not reverse destruction, but I also picked up on this. Like, this is going to be in Tom's clip list, which is the touch teaching.
That's just great. That's just gorgeous stuff,
They're learning by osmosis.
It's very hip. Yeah, he's learning the sum of Western civilization knowledge through touch.
This is the one,
and it looks so cool. Sorry,
those music video moments.
Yeah, no, this is just like some dipshit music video directors like taking notes. It's like, oh shit, man.
This is like work? The stuff's so well composed too. Like, there's a moment where he's laying on the ground, and on his arm is like, there's a nude like on his arm, like a classical nude, and like just the way that everything is laid out is so cool. I guess because they had time to do it. It's 16 millimeter, and
Yeah, I heard that the guy who did all these projections was I don't know his name, but he worked on 2001 and did a bunch of rear projection stuff. So they brought him in from 2001. He also did stuff for Aliens as well. And,
Look at that! Look at that, guys.
Oh, yeah.
I know. So this guy is like super projection, technician here, and all the stuff that they're doing. Yeah, projecting.
They got the guy. No, look at that in like musical notes, and I like the musical notes in the text. On the faces. It's a beautiful visual representation of the concept of absorbing the sum of all knowledge within like 10 minutes.
And projecting nudes and stuff.
Yeah, look at that.
There's a lot of great visual moments in this movie. There's probably like 10 different scenes that have just really great, cool, vibey 70s visuals.
Ooh,
like
reverse
this?
destruction, my man.
Yeah,
I love
this. Is just great. It's so simple. It's like the most simple trick in the book, but
like
it's
the commentary, he had to point out how he did it. I was watching the director's commentary, and he's like,
"He did.
Of course, we did this with by reversing the footage."
No shit, John Boorman.
We didn't have cell phones.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he does say that. Yeah. Well, that's just like crazy.
I don't know if you noticed or not, but this was before computers.
None of this is computer animation.
All right,
we just
1 minute.
ran it backward.
We're just 1 minute. I just want to summarize the, I think we're all in agreement. Great ideas in Zardoz. It's bogged down by an overzealous, overambitious follow-up to a hit film. But one thing I think that could really aid this movie, and I think you said it best, Tom, is better editor. I think having an editor taking the same drugs John Boorman was taking might have helped. Or just the people that did The Visitor, man. If they got the Visitor crew in there to fuck with Zardoz, I think we've just seen a real hot fucking
It'd be
movie.
rip roaring. Yeah, it needs to have an engine. Every movie needs an engine, Even like a Bresson film, it needs, it's just, it just doesn't have it just stalls out constantly, especially right in the beginning, like I said.
I gotta say,
and a better script. Sorry, the middle's really soft and mushy.
There's great music. I love the end.
Okay. Yeah, Tom didn't let you have that one. All right, everybody, that
You
was
got
one.
it. We're under the gun. It's fine.
Hey, we did it. It was said that it couldn't be done. That no one.
That's right. They said no one could talk about Zardoz for an hour.
Yeah, we literally we literally were be honest, true. We were texting over the last couple days, being like, "Can we do this? Is this gonna happen?" But I think
we were going to cancel.
We were going to cancel.
And then we're fighting over it.
We were going to call in sick.
Yeah, we were.
Look, it's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag. Zardoz is very special, and I like the ideas and the visuals. It's just there's all this fat that needs to get cut away or reshaped. It's just it happens. It happens. There are flawed films. There are flawed works of art, but they're of merit still. It's kind of like this album. Sorry, this album. It's kind of like this movie has like fucking 3 killer tracks, and then it's like, ooh, the last song on side 1. It's like that kind of somewhat.
What is this, fucking 65 minutes now?
Yeah, I know. I was thinking the clock is over, my friend.
We're not allowed to talk about Zardoz anymore, bro.
Zip it up.
We can chat.
Okay.
We can chat. I'm done. I'm wrapping it up. Just saying.
That spray bottle.
My final thought. It's my Jerry Springer final thought.
That's cool. I like it. I like it.
Yeah. Totally. I'm glad it exists, and I'm glad we did it because it is a fascinating part of film history. It's a fascinating follow-up, even though it's flawed and it's a flop. And it was the studio took a fucking bath on it. I think it's a real fascinating piece of film history. But anyway, enough about Zardoz. We're out
because we're moving on.
Yeah, we're moving on up. Let's talk about next week, guys. I'm excited because it's totally different. It's a different decade. We're getting out of the 70s. We're going into the 90s, and we're talking about a film that we all just recently happened to rewatch, not even for homework, and just for pure enjoyment. And man, I fucking love this movie, and I'm so excited to talk about it next week.
Me too.
And that is the only film of this director.
Wait, drum roll.
Okay.
Well, say your piece, and then let's pause dramatically.
Okay. Yep. All right. Okay. I think he's the only film by this director that I think is a good movie, a great movie, and that I like, and that is Quentin Tarantino's
Kill Bill.
Jackie Brown, motherfucker. So we're doing...
Yay! Da-da. I'm so excited. No, really, and I agree with you. Evan, I'm right on the money with you. Like you had brought it up that you'd rewatched it recently, and then I just threw it on a couple days ago, and I'd always liked it a lot, but I hadn't seen it in forever. And man, it's in his works. Like I haven't been the biggest fan. I'm not like a super QT guy, frankly, but this is just killer. This is
killer
such
stuff.
Good.
And can I say, if I might, because I think it's on brand for tonight. You talk about Zardoz being John Boorman's Magnolia. This movie is the opposite of what a QT Magnolia would be, because he comes hot off the heels of one of the most successful films of the 1990s and makes a very contained, smart, emotional, intimate film.
Yeah.
And
it's a love story too, and it's beautifully composed and there's such restraint. It's
Should I
great.
Start the fucking clock right
So,
now.
yeah, right.
Let's go. Let's do JB. Fire it up. Let's go. Strawberry, let the 23.
Motherfucking goddamn orange.
Strawberry, let the 23.
So anyway,
I love it. I mean,
yeah. Next week we're coming back strong. We're doing this over. Strong reboot. We're doing Jackie Brown next week. I'm very excited to talk about this movie. A lot to say.
And our premise: Quentin's best by a mile.
By a fucking mile. And Spray Bottle's coming back strong next week. All right, everybody.
Really?
Yes, it is. Hard.
All right.
Anyway, I hope you enjoyed Zardoz. Not the movie, but the one fucking hour. And now it is time for your beautiful, wonderful moment of Zen. And we'll see you all next week. Have a great weekend, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.
Zardoz.
Motherfucking goddamn orange peel beef.